All right, welcome in everybody. We are here for part three of our home inspection segment. I am Jared Rail, realtor with Long River Realty and also real estate appraiser here in Arizona. We're here with Tim Holley, the broker owner of Long River Realty, and our favorite home inspector, Michael Johnson from Amerispec.
Thank you, sir.
How's everybody doing today?
Doing
Great.
great. Thanks for asking. How about y'all?
Good,
Good,
good.
good, good.
All right, so Mike, we're here to talk about some of the most common issues with electrical. So, what kind of, do you have a brief introduction into electrical, or you want to dive right into your most common issues?
I tell you what, electrical is the scariest for me. It's the most diverse. There is so much information that goes into the components of a home, wiring everything, making sure that it's safe. That is the probably number one word when you're talking about electricity is making sure it's safe or regulated. You know, probably my number one thing that we're finding out in these homes today is the lack of GFCI protection. Sorry, just going into the safety part of it. We'll dive right in. These systems are put in place to make sure that you're safe. GFCIs are specifically for water and electricity that mixes. These receptacles that are implemented in homes or breakers, because you can have either or, is a safety mechanism to cut the power to that specific area. God forbid water was mixing, and the way it tracks it is circuits. Electrical capabilities are in a circuitry. They run in a circuit. And the first time that this GFCI receptacle or breaker detects a milliamp off, it shuts it down. And that's what makes it safe to have in the homes. They didn't implement these things until, gosh, I don't know the exact year of when GFCI was implemented. Maybe what was it, the late 80s, maybe the early 90s in all frequent locations, meaning wet locations, exterior garage. When I do 70s and 80s homes here in Havasu, the only place I find GFCI protection is the kitchen. That's the only area. You are required to have it on the exterior, the garage, and then 2 foot off the center of any wet location of an interior or of a home nowadays, exterior or interior. And then detached garages, these are supposed to be protected as well. And I'm sure we'll get into other things, but that's probably my number one area that we are calling out is the lack of GFCI protection. That and double tapping. And I can go into that if you'd like now, or if you
Yeah,
have any
tell
other
us about
questions.
double tapping because a lot of people don't realize it, and that's
Sure.
inside the electrical box
Sure,
itself.
it is. It's the electrical panel, and I like we talk about we were talking about the previous episode. Not a lot of people go underneath the kitchen sink. Same thing here. Not a lot of people go into the main panel of the electrical panel of a home. But what we do is we take that panel off, and what we're talking about is double tapping of breakers, which is where you have a UL listed breaker that is not listed to have more than one power source leading to it. And this is where you have two power sources going into one breaker. And this is an incorrect way of installation. You're pulling power from a breaker that's not UL listed to do such. And you're putting yourself at risk for the breaker overheating, having too much amperage going to it. You can have sparking, you can have arcing, which are huge safety issues for yourself in the home. Yeah. And
Yeah, I've had people come to me and say, I have this one breaker that keeps flipping. And
there you go.
it's like, have you never thought maybe you ought to get that checked out, that there
Yeah.
might be a problem? Because I think
Yeah.
breakers are only good for about 3 or 4 breaks, and they should change them out anyways.
I agree. I agree. And
So,
not only that, or under amperage or over amperage for breakers as well is something that I find quite often. A lot of times I find them on HVAC systems where it'll call for a max 35 amp breaker, and you'll have a 50 amp breaker out on the panel.
I just wanted to
Um,
make sure it never flip again.
Right. It's like, oh my gosh, man. Or it's the other way, which in the other way, that breaker is heating up so hot, and you can thermal image that, and it's 3 times hotter than all the other breakers on there, and you can physically feel it when you put your hand next to it. Because one thing I like to do when I pull the panel off, obviously, trying to do it in a safe manner. I've had people talk about arcing and sparking when they're pulling these things off, so we have to be safe about it. But pulling that panel off, first off, I'm checking to make sure if it's a rat's nest or if it's done right. And I think we all kind of know what we're talking about there. You know, a lot of times people will, or electricians or handyman, whoever's doing it, will not pull enough line to reach the breaker. So you have a straight line going from the top feed down to the breaker. And the reason this is bad is because electricity has a vibrating tendency. So as it's got electricity running through it, the wire is doing a little shift. And if it's not loose, if it's being pulled, or if it's not tight and it's being pulled, it's going to wiggle out. If it's wiggled out and still close, you're going to, cause a little bit of an arc there. Having a good bend down to the breaker with your electrical line is key. Making sure, again, everything has its single electrical line going to it and it's not double tapped. And then your neutrals and grounds, which is it's a system inside the actual panel itself. It's grounding systems. It's a safety mechanism as well. A lot of times I find these doubled as well, and we can't do that as well. Codes and systems and regulations have changed so much in the electrical handbook, and it's you have to really stay on top of a lot of these things. Another thing would be arc fault circuit interrupters. These are now fashioned on newer homes, and this is actually almost the same thing as a GFCI protection, but this is actually in integrated for fires. These are actually breakers that go to each bedroom, that God forbid you had a spark on an electrical line leading to that room, it shuts the power off, eliminating any type of fires that would start in the home. So as you see, electrical capabilities get better and better. They get the systems themselves become safer. They've started to integrate all of the smoke detectors now. So if one goes off, all of them go off, hardwired, smokies. These are all major systems for electrical components.
Something on the electrical. Do you call out broken faceplates? Because I know I went into a place one time and moving stuff around, and behind the couch, I just, for some reason, I don't know how I even caught the angle, but I seen there was a broken faceplate, and the couch was pushed up against it.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled the couch away because that made me nervous, one, having that up against there. And I asked the people, I said, what happened here? Oh, my husband pushed the couch too hard, so it broke the faceplate, and we never repaired it. And I'm like, that's like a $2.50 item.
Yeah.
And you have your couch pushed up against that socket. I was nervous, so I pulled the thing out. But
let me ask you this: when they push that in, what happens to the receptacle inside there?
Exactly.
Because not only the faceplate's going back, but the receptacle is getting pushed back. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, everything is solid and secure back there. But what if?
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't know if it's necessarily. I'm definitely noted for sure. You're not gonna. Sometimes I take them off just to check inside. I like to know myself. I'm a huge investigator, to make sure it's safe. But yeah, we will call those out. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Got to be safe.
I mean, especially for $2.50 to replace one.
Do it. And you know what? You call it out.
It's not even $2.50.
Hey,
You
no.
right for about $5 or probably 50 cents.
I'm not going to Tim's hardware store. I'll tell you that.
I got to make a buck.
But yeah. But when we call it out, maybe just telling the client, "Hey, this isn't a big deal." We need to just make sure what's going on behind it. Yeah. That's a good question.
Holy moly! I wrote a bunch of stuff down because you just went through so much stuff there.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm like,
there's so
Jared.
much with electrical. It really is.
I'll be quiet now, Jared. You take the controls.
You're good. You're good.
Break out your props. Let's see what you got for us today.
Threw a whole lot of information there, and I'm gonna. I don't know if I even got it all, but going back to GFIs,
yes, sir.
Or GFCIs. They used to call them GFIs, right?
I was going to say, I've heard it said both ways, so you're correct.
And either way, are you mostly seeing that you did talk about, older homes where they didn't have them in all the wet locations, but even on newer homes you're testing those to make
Mhm.
sure they operate correctly, that they're wired correctly. I've seen them where they've got um, the circuits are backwards of
Open grounded, hot neutral reversed. Yep.
so, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that in terms of not only just missing GFIs, but
Hmm.
them not being there. I
Hmm.
see that frequently
Hmm.
in newer houses where even where they were intended to be there, they've been removed and a regular
Sure.
outlet installed. They're like,
Sure.
well, the circuit kept tripping.
Yeah. Right. We got sick of pushing the button. Yeah.
Yeah, and so my fridge keeps tripping the GFI
Hmm.
in the kitchen. Well, the
Hmm.
fridge isn't supposed to be on a GFI, if I'm not mistaken. It's supposed to start downhill from there, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of times I find and this is where it gets tough with occupied dwellings, because a lot of times people will have a secondary fridge in the garage, and we have to check those things. I was at a house one time and we had to check the GFCI. I had to make sure it's safe, and we tripped it, and I couldn't find it because the gentleman installed a homeowner style GFCI behind a like 2,000-pound safe that we couldn't see over. You know me, I'm not a tall guy anyway, so I couldn't see it. And the refrigerator was linked up to that circuit of GFCI. Now, they are usually plugged into a circuitry of a GFCI protected area. So if you trip that, you got to make sure that you're resetting, because you will lose food. Your food will spoil. I had to pay like $300 worth of food back to this guy because I tripped it. I couldn't find it, and food spoiled. But I normally don't see them on them, but they usually are on a dedicated circuit, meaning it's somewhere down the line or up the line or down the line. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
I don't know if it's uphill or downhill.
Yeah.
I think I said downhill, but maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
uphill. I don't know.
Up, down, left, right. We're there.
We are not electricians, right? Tim, going back to what you talked about with cracked cover plates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a cracked cover plate to me isn't as big of an issue, but missing cover plates or half of the cover plate is missing, that'll get called out in an appraisal. If Mike doesn't call it out, the appraiser is going to call it out because,
That we do, yeah.
and that's going right back to the first thing you said, electricity is scary, and we're talking about safety, right? So that's why it's an issue in an appraisal. It's a safety issue. Anything related to safety, an appraiser's got to call it out. So for anybody who's wondering about that stuff, that the primary focus on an appraisal in regards to required repairs, that's probably like number one is
Yeah.
safety, and number two would be things that are preventing further damage.
Absolutely. I remember one time I was painting a townhome before we moved out here in North Carolina, and I obviously had all the faceplates off. I was doing all this, and you would think I'm a general contractor's son coming out to do a home inspection gig. You would know where to. I was sitting on the floor getting up, and I put my hands next to one of those receptacles without the cover plate on it, and I got hit by, I don't know if it was 15 amps or 20 amps, whatever, the low voltage lighting. Oh my gosh, that it hurt. It really hurt. And it's just funny because I never thought in a million years, with my background, knowing what to do, I'm like, faceplates off, whatever. Whatever. I still put my hand next to it, and I got zapped. So that, again, what you were saying, if they're missing, yes. If they're damaged, we're wanting to let them know you need to look at this thing, because what happened to make the damage?
Yeah, I mean, if they're damaged or they're falling off, it's just a safety issue. Somebody, little Johnny's going to stick his finger in there,
Oh gosh, I can't
and
tell you how many times my kids have gotten so close to these receptacles. It's
yeah,
unreal.
and another thing, you talked about while working on stuff, because homeowners, many homeowners, myself included, I'm guilty of this. Oh well, I can just change out that switch or that outlet real quick, or that ceiling fan without
Mm-hmm.
turning off the power. You shouldn't be too
Mm,
lazy to just go turn off the breaker or figure out which breaker it is you need to turn it off. But I've gotten that zap.
yeah,
I'm
it's
trying to
not
do
fun.
something, and just a quick little zzz, but it wakes you up real quick, and it's like, okay, I
I got locked on it.
shouldn't do it like this. I should
Yeah,
probably go flip the breaker. That's why it's there.
Yeah,
and that's what made me mad, is I didn't do that. Sorry, Tim. I didn't do exactly that, and I was like, "This is such a rookie move."
Well, it was we were installing a Ring doorbell
Mm-hmm.
house, and it
Yep.
tells you in there turn off the power, and I'm thinking, wow, what kind of voltage we got going through the doorbell that they want you to
Can you
trip the
imagine
breaker.
if you had it wired, it turned on, and the first image is of you, and it's like the guy off of Home Alone when he's like got the
Yeah, just
radio.
lighting up, finger stuck to the doorbell. Like, what the heck is that?
You got to put that on a screensaver, man. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got a couple other notes here.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Running an oversized breaker on a circuit like you talked about, you find a 50 amp on an air conditioning unit that should have a 35 or something.
Mm-hmm.
The big concern there is that could be like a fire hazard or something, right?
Absolutely.
If it's trying to trip the breaker, it is telling you there is something wrong with the unit.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
by allowing more and more to come through there, that's what we're worried about, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? It's not if, like termites out here, it's when. It's going to happen, man. The system is going to overheat. It's going to strain to keep your house cool. And if it's not wired appropriately, like I always tell people with electricity, they put numbers on there for a reason. They're not. It's not just. It's not a suggestion. If it's maxed 35 and you're 15 amps over that, 15 amps in an electrical world, it's a lot. It's a lot. And plus, it's not rated for it. And that's the big thing. The system is not rated to have that much juice going to it. So something's gonna happen. And a lot of times the interior parts of it start to mess up. And that's where you start having systems that start shutting down or not cooling appropriately.
I've never seen a 36. I don't think they make them, right. You're automatically jumping from up to at least 5 over.
Yeah. Right.
So you are letting quite a bit of additional power. Get a professional to come take a look at the system that is causing it to trip, or it could just be a bad breaker, and that's why it's tripping.
Yeah. If you can't find a good HVAC company out here, just like a termite company or a pool company, we've got issues. There's plenty of them to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, they look at it, they may say, hey, there's nothing wrong with the HVAC system. So
right.
Your next thing is change the breaker.
Right.
And maybe it stops. All it was a bad breaker, and there's a whole other issue that you don't want to be involved in.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You couldn't have said it better. Yep.
Okay. You talked about code changes, and you're doing a home inspection, and sometimes the house is 20 years older than what we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. You're letting people know, hey, this isn't up to the current code, and it's not a requirement though for the seller to bring the property up to the current code, but it does. Your job is to inform the buyer so that they know what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's more geared toward the safety aspect of it, because technically a home inspector, we're not code enforcers, but we're safety enforcers. That's how we can kind of dabble into that part of it. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to keep that thing safe. That's the big part of it is the safety key of it. And I want to say it's every 4 years, the National Electric Committee, they implement new rules, better upgrades, safety upgrades, and implements in certain areas. But yeah, I mean, you got to stay up on those things, and that is exactly what we're looking for: safety items. Yeah.
And so
that actually makes me think. Sorry, Tim. One more thing, real quick, and then I've got more notes.
Yeah.
I wonder, it might be a good idea. I bought my house in 19 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be a bad idea to hire somebody like Mike to come over and take a look, because I'm sure I got some issues.
Jared, you and I are on the same page there, because I was just going to say that when you said, wait, hold on, one more thing. I was just thinking the same thing, that you have your AC checked out, you have your water heater checked out, but have you had your house checked out to see what codes have changed and upgraded that is new, but not to your home because your home is older home?
Absolutely. So my home's an 05, and it's funny when you work in a field, then you come home, you don't notice as much as when you're working on another home. But like our home, we don't have arc fault circuit interrupters. They didn't start that until I want to say 2015 or 2020, somewhere around there. So like you're saying, a lot of these things the NEC starts to implement. They start to take notice of things that happen. Wire damages, wire deteriorations, sparking, arcing. So they are constantly trying to make houses safer, more functional, more efficient. So that's the product of what they do, and that's the product of the new codes that come out. So, and again, we're not code enforcers, but I like to stay up on some of them because some of them do actually integrate to what we're looking at with the home, meaning the GFCIs, arcs, and things like that, smoke detectors, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of what I was getting at again is it's not that the home inspector pointed this out. This house has been this way for a really long time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a good place to think about for future improvement, even if you're not going to ask the seller to fix it. And that
Absolutely.
home inspection comes in play there for that. And I mean, the thing we just talked about, I could have you come take a look at my house. You're going to find all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I bought it in 2006, but it's a 96 house. There's
Mm-hmm.
been a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
I've done significant amount of updating to the home, but there's going to be stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never even thought about something like that before, but it's actually probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask you a question, Jared, real quick? And when you're doing appraisals, or even you, Tim, as well, because I think I've called a couple of these out on some inspections as well. But do you ever get the panels that are obsolete? The Federal Pacific stat blocks, the Bulldogs, the Zinskos, the ITEs. Do you ever come across these while you're doing your
Up in
appraisals?
Kingman all the time.
Yes, yes.
So, and from the appraisal standpoint, we're
Mm-hmm.
we're not really,
Okay.
you know, what I'm looking for. Okay, is the you talked about opening up the electric panel, the
Yeah,
cover.
yeah, yeah.
I'll get to a house and I'll open up the thing and it's wide open. There's no cover
Okay,
anymore.
okay, yeah.
You
And
got
I
the glass fuse.
Those are fun.
hey, you got to cover that thing up. That's a safety issue.
Man,
That's
those are
that's
fun.
huge.
Because you know what? You take that, you lift that up. What if it hits something that's coming out into your face? That's scary.
So and to you know probably appraisers should have some understanding, and you're talking about these outlawed
Mm-hmm.
panels or the aluminum
Right.
wiring and things like
Yes.
that, but
Yes. Yes.
we generally aren't looking for and don't see that. Like I don't
Yeah.
bring any tools to do an appraisal other
Yeah.
than measuring and things like that. I'm not. I don't bring a screwdriver. I'm not opening anything up.
What
So
about with the safety standpoint? Because we call it out, I still will take the panel off. Our state says, if it's that style, don't touch it. We're supposed to call it out, leave it. I like to look, and I know that's bad to say, and I don't know if I like to look. I haven't not once found one of those bad panels to be damaged or have an interior issue. They're always fine. It's just the fact that they are obsolete. They don't manufacture them anymore, and if you need a replacement part, it's damn near impossible to find it.
well,
Um,
and I think the reason they've been out, some of those have been outlawed because of things that it's working fine until it's not, and then all of a sudden, boom, the
there you
house
go.
is on
Yeah,
fire,
yeah.
right? So that I think is the bigger issue. It may go up in smoke at any point in time, and that's what we're trying to avoid, and why there's
Hmm. Hmm.
telling you to
No,
call
complete
out
sense.
no
Yep,
ifs, ands, or buts. But
yep.
you know, as appraisers, we're not home inspectors.
Right, right.
That's I'm deferring to you in that regard.
Yeah,
There are things we are looking at, but it's very minimal compared to
yeah,
what you're doing. And
yeah.
again, I'm not even I need to go into a crawl space under a manufactured home, right?
Hmm.
Um, but if that crawl space is secured, meaning it's all bolted up and screwed shut, I mean, there's supposed to
Hmm.
be an access door.
Right.
Sometimes they don't have them. Hey, I got to come back and check that once you guys open it.
I
We're,
have that problem
we're
too.
not taking
Yeah,
that apart. We're not, especially the plastic ones. You
yeah.
know, if I touch it, it's going to fall apart. It's
And then
sometimes.
it's on you. Yeah. Oh, I get it. I get it.
So,
Yeah, and even back to the electrical panels, as a real estate broker and agent, we're not supposed to dive into that and say, but our job is to inform the public, disclose to the public if we see something that may not be right, may not be up to code, just like with what Mike does. we're also required to
Mm-hmm.
give a recommendation to the buyers or
Mm-hmm.
even the sellers. Hey, you might want to get this checked out for a safety issue. We have to call those out. And
Yeah,
like I say, we're not, but, and our job isn't to do the inspection part of it, but help direct the people to the right people to get it
sure,
checked out for
sure,
safety reasons.
sure. I hate finding them because my comment is very aggressive. I usually have to go in and dull it down because it's like, oh, you've got this panel, it's obsolete, replacement
You're going to
part.
catch on fire.
Right. Yeah. You don't you go in that room now.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, you need a new panel, it needs to be relocated. I mean, I also find panels a lot of times in bathrooms or
Yep.
closets, and that is another no-no. Since '93, we haven't allowed any of that, especially the bathrooms, due to the moisture content in the air when you're showering. But yeah, I mean, we find it all here in Havasu. It's funny when clients are on the inspections with me. I'll find some stuff here and there, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And it's Havasu, baby. It's
Yeah.
Havasu.
You'll find in Havasu on the older duplexes,
Oh
a lot of them are 2 bedroom, 2 baths.
yeah,
And it's always in the, not the main bath, but the
uh-huh.
second bath closet is where you'll find the electrical panel.
You're
I don't know
absolutely right.
what that was, but that's where they put them all.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right.
So, yep,
Half of them are always covered. We can't see them. So
yep, exactly.
It's interesting you brought up about that. Like a wet location. I guess a laundry room's not considered a wet location, right? Because I see like a manufactured home, that's pretty much standard for the sub panel to be in the laundry room on all
absolutely, absolutely,
homes, right?
yeah. And a lot of times, a lot of that, I guess that heat is transferred through the exhaust vent outside. So that does help. So yeah, I absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I've seen ones. Where are the ones? Right off of Lakes Havasu Ave, down by the curve of 95. Those apartment buildings by the loan building, they all have them in the bathroom. And I did one a couple years ago, took it off, and the amount of oxidation inside that panel was, I could take my screwdriver and just rust flakes would fall off. That one was, I was like, you need to get this fixed. You're
Yeah.
in lieu of the whole framework in the back crumbling. So yeah, again, you see everything here, and you just got to make sure people are being safe. Like you guys have said multiple times, electrical capabilities are about being safe.
Yep.
So here's a thought or a question for you,
Yes, sir.
they for commercial,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times a commercial bathroom isn't going to have a shower, and I'm guessing it probably isn't that uncommon to find a panel in a bathroom in a commercial building where it's no shower, but that's going to have the same kind of steam issues that you have in a regular bathroom, right?
Sure, sure, absolutely. I don't think as much. The shower really puts a lot of moisture into the air. The sink does it, but very minimally. It's not as bad. A lot of the commercial properties that I inspect, I haven't seen a lot of them in the bathrooms, but they will have them in the room next to them.
That's what ours is, on the outside
Mhm.
wall of the
Yeah.
bathroom here at our office.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to make a note. I'm going to Google it when we get done. Maybe it is. It may not be against code.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the current code, but
Yeah.
I bet you at one point it wasn't.
And see, that's the thing, because we're not code enforcers. I'm not fully versed in the codes, but like I said, a lot of our safety features with electrical capabilities runs into code enforcement. So,
And again, I just want to reiterate, our real estate license on the real estate side of it does not cover being an electrical inspector. That's why we hire the home inspectors. But please, people, if you think you have something that could be not right with your electrical, if somebody tells you something that, hey, I don't think that's right, call a professional.
yeah,
Get it
yeah,
checked out for the safety of you and your family and everybody around you.
that's a great thing to say. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
On that note, I've got actually one more thing written down, and something that I see frequently that you probably see, Mike, is somebody's run or they connect to a patio light and they run a Romex wire up and over in the patio,
Good one.
and then they connect a ceiling fan or
Good one.
another light overhead in the patio where there wasn't one before.
Yep.
But they're running a Romex with no conduit. You can run the
Sure.
can run power out there, but it's
Yeah.
got to be in a conduit,
It's
right?
got to be covered. Got to be encased in conduit. How about this? When they do that same thing, Jared, and then they put metal staples to
Oh yeah, so
staple.
you
Have you ever seen that?
extension, and it's maybe not even romance. It's a indoor outdoor extension
Yes, sir.
cord that they cut
Yes,
the
sir.
ends off of
Yes, sir.
and used it as wiring.
All of these things we write up. Non-conduit. Again, this is probably one that I should have said in the beginning of the episode, Tim. This is probably another thing, just like GFCI protection inside cabinets, where they'll put new junction boxes on the end of a cabinet in a kitchen. They'll run that Romex all the way underneath the piping. Outside, the stapling it, all that stuff. Yeah, the splicing of the what we call its extension cord wiring for permanent wiring. That's what we call it out for, and it's not listed for that. You cannot do that. It is not allowed. So stop doing it. So, please.
Talk about living on the edge. How about running a screw right in the middle of the ground and the power? Let's just run a screw.
You're getting
I've seen nails and screws in between the two wires on kind of like an indoor outdoor extension cord, and somebody ran a screw through there. That's
that's the Russian roulette day. That he had a bad day that day.
Yeah.
We don't want to know what he was going through. Yeah, it and again, I know I keep saying it, but Havasu has the craziest stuff. That's why, like you're saying, Tim, Jared, if you have questions on it, ask. If you're getting a home, get a home inspection.
You're really picking on Havasu, but
man,
I see a lot of the same stuff in the other.
It's all over.
Oh, do you? Okay,
it's all over. Yeah. It's
See, I've only been home inspecting here. I've been out here 10 years now. But when I was back in North Carolina building, my father he builds beautiful Parade style homes. So it's custom homes. So we do about 10 a year, and everything's pristine. So I didn't deal a lot with this stuff out here. Things that should have been in a home were there, and some. We did 2 or 3, final walkthroughs, blue tape walkthroughs. I mean, it was a big deal. And then we came out here, and it was, and everything. It's good, but you just have a lot of, handyman style stuff here and there. So,
So what we just said is it's not Lake Havasu, it's Arizona.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got it. Well, I got a buddy in Yuma. He does Amerispec in Yuma. His name's Grant, and him and I, we trade horror stories, just like kind of what we do every now and again. And you are right. It is everywhere. So you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to lead us into our next episode, right, guys?
We're wrapping up episode 3 today. We'll be going into episode 4 and talk about some structural. Mike, again, let everybody know how to get a hold of you.
Sure. So Mike at Amerispec, cell phone 910-398-3661, and the business line is 928-854-2595, and we are open 24/7, 365. Give us a call.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, thank you.
We'll see you guys next week for structural.
Yeah, hit the like, the subscribe, the share. And if I don't think I mentioned these suppliers for once in an episode that I usually get talked about, that they are not right now currently paying to be in these episodes for me to mention these people. But if anybody wants to pay, here we are. We're welcoming that. But anyways, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you on the next episode of structural engineering or structural.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.